3 of the primary colours down, it's now time to take a look and see which red cards made it into the Pauper Cube. Hello and welcome to Life Begins at 20. My name is Mark and thank you so much for joining me. Now, if you've been following along this budget cube build along series, it's now time to actually get into seeing which cards I've put into the cube. What I will mention to start off with is that I've upped the cube size to 450 cards rather than the 405, but that's just going to be going through testing, and then hopefully during that point in time I can see which cards are performing, which ones are not, and then slowly whittle it down to 405. But at this moment in time, with Masters 25 coming out as well, during the point in time where I was building this, I actually wanted to put in 10 cards from there and a few other bits and pieces as well, just to kind of see how the cube was going, and then we can look at bringing that size down. But for now it's 450 cards, and there'll be a link in the description below as well for the Cube Tutor link to see that cube as a whole list. If you want to just copy it, feel free to. If you want to make your own changes and suggestions, again, let me know in the comment section below. If you see some cards in there you think, oh, why have you got that in there? I can think of a better one. Great, let me know in the comment section as well below, because to be perfectly honest, I don't know every card in Magic. I'm not going to say I do, because that would be mental. But if there are cards that I've missed that would make a huge improvement over what I've got, again, let me know in the comments section below. You'll know what all of the art types are as well from previous videos that I've put together. I will link the playlist on the screen now for you. There'll be a card on the screen so you can take a look and see what's going on there, so you can know what all the different archetypes I'm going to be supporting are in this cube. But for now, let's get stuck in and see which cards I've put in. Starting off now with the red 1-drops, we've got Bloodlust Inciter. So it's a 1/1, which is you can tap it to target creature gains haste until the end of turn, which is a fantastic card to have, especially either early on in the game to get in some extra damage, or later on in the game to get one of the bigger creatures out and really slam home without your player, your opposing player realizing and coming in for the win there. Next up, we've got a new card come down from Masters 25. Again, it's a foil, if we can just about see that. And for this one is a 1/1 for 1, and whenever it attacks you may pay 1 red. If you do, target creature can't block this turn, which is great because it just means that you can then pay that 1, stop one of your opponents being able to actually do anything and swing in for that extra bit of damage, and that's going to add up towards the end of the game. Next up, we've got Goblin Cohort. So it's a 2/2 for 1, and it can't attack unless you've cast a creature spell this turn. So there are plenty of cheap creatures within a red aggro deck as well, so this is going to actually be able to be online far more than not. Next up, we've got Insolent Neonate. So it's a 1/1 for 1 with Menace. Again, that's great because you can swing in early on until your opponents have got a bit of a board presence going on. And you can discard a card, sacrifice it to draw a card as well. So that'd be nice if your opponent actually does eventually manage to block it. It means you can still get some advantage out of it. Next up, we've got another card that's been downshifted in Masters 25 in Jackal Pup, but to be perfectly honest, I like the older artwork on that foil there, so I had to get this one instead. And again, it's not a huge amount of a downside in for a 2/1 for 1 here at common level, which is great. And whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to you. It's a 2/1 for 1, so you're going to be able to get a lot more damage onto your opponent than they're going to deal back. And last of all, in the 1-drops, we've got Mog Conscript. So we've got a 2/2 for 1 again, and it can't attack unless you've successfully cast a creature spell this turn. So very, very similar to Goblin Cohort there, but it's just, pretty much a different name and some very, very old looking artwork. Moving on now to the bulk of the creatures in red, especially because red is predominantly an aggro colour, and that is, we're going to start off with Borderland Marauder. So we've got a 1/2 for 2, but whenever it attacks, it gets +2/+0 to the end of turn. It's always probably going to be attacking, so it's really a 3/2 for 2 there. Next up, we've got another one of the new additions from Masters 25, and yeah, again, it's foil. I got all of the cards that I got from Masters 25 to get into this Pauper Cube with foil, because to be fair, most of them are actually pretty cheap. But needless to say, we've got ourselves a 2/1 for 2 here. You can pay 1 red, target creature you control gains haste until the end of turn. So again, similar to what we had early on in the 1-drop section, it just means that you can pay the 1 instead. So it means you can do that multiple times if you've got the mana to do that. Next up, we've got Fireslinger. So for 1 and red, you've got ourselves a 1/1, and you can tap it to deal 1 damage to target creature or player and 1 damage to you. So again, bits of removal there for potential creatures that you want to get rid of, or it just means you can end up doing, burning your opponent down. And with the amount of removal and damaging spells that you've got in red, I don't see a problem with actually swinging in and doing damage straight to the opponent there. Next up, we've got Goblin Freerunner. Again, this is really down to being a 2-drop because most of the time you're only going to be paying 2 with the surge cost there. It's a 3/2 with menace for 2 if you can play, if you pay an extra spell on the turn. And I mean, considering you've got loads of cheap one costing, spells like lightning bolt and whatnot in red, it's going to potentially be that cheap to come out anyway most of the time, and having the bit of evasion is great. Next up we've got Gorehouse Chainwalker. Again, it's a foil there. It's got Unleash, so really this is a 3/2 for 2. Next up we've got Keldon Marauders. Again, we've got another foil. 1 and a red, it's a 3/3 with Vanishing 2. So when it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player. Now, this is great because it means that you're going to definitely be doing a minimum of 2 damage here for the 2 mana cost you're going to be there. You're going to be swinging in once with it, and it's potentially going to take out a creature as well, either from them blocking or you doing some blocking as well, so that's always nice to have. Next up we've got Kiln Fiend. Again, this fits into nicely with Spells Matter archetype that we've got within red and blue, and to be perfectly honest, even a red aggro deck, if you're going to cast a lot of spells, it's going to be doing some significant damage for you, and that just is whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery spell, it gets +3/+0 to the end of turn. Keep stacking and stacking and stacking. I mean, there's a great Pauper deck, which is It Blitz, that utilizes this and Nivik Cyclops, which again is in the blue-red section within this cube as well, because I just wanted to support that. The only thing I haven't put in as of yet, I may well do, I'm not 100% sure about it, is Team of Battle Rage, just to be able to use that combination to really go in for a kill. Again, I'll see how testing goes. I may try and put it in, test it and see what it looks like. But for now, it's not in there because I potentially think that might be a little bit too strong. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Kiln Fiend is definitely in there. Next up, we've got Mardu Scout. It's a 3/1, and you're only really paying the dash cost for this. It comes in, it plays the spell for its dash cost, it gains haste, it deals damage, returns to the battlefield, can bring it out to your hand. So you can just keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And yeah, to be perfectly honest, you're only really going to be using the dash cost there unless you want to keep them around. But having the haste, it makes a bit more of a difference there. Mogwai Marshal's next. So for 1 and a red, you've got yourself a 1/1, enters the battlefield or dies, you get a 1/1 red goblin creature token onto the battlefield. So worst case scenario, it's 2 goblins for 1 and a red. Worst case scenario. You can pay the echo cost if you'd like to keep it around for a little bit longer, especially if you haven't necessarily got a next turn play, or it's later on in the game, you just want to have this around it, swinging either for an extra bit of damage or use it as a chump blocker if needed. Next up, we've got Plated Geopede. It's a 1/1 first strike for 1 and a red, but landfall trigger is what you're looking at here. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +2/+2 to the end of turn. So really, it's a 3/3 first strike creature. I'd say half of the time, I'm not going to be all the time, but most of the time it's a 3/3 first strike creature you're just going to be swinging in with. Next up, we've got Thermo Alchemist. Again, sits in nicely with the Spells Matter style deck, or a bit more of a burn deck within red, and that is a nice defender there, 0/3, but you can tap it to ping the opponent for 1 damage, and whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, untap it. So some turns you could actually ping in for a hell of a lot of damage here. You just got to remember to ping him first, then cast your spells, and keep doing that between each time. Next up, we've got Thriving Grubs. So for 1 and a red, it's a 2/1 that enters the battlefield with 2 energy counters. And whenever it attacks, you may put those 2 energy counters, take away to get a +1/+1 counter on it. Now, to be perfectly honest, most of the time, you're not got that much energy other in the cube anyway. So really, it's going to be a 2/1 until it attacks, and then it just becomes a 3/2 for the rest of the game. And last of all, in 2-drop section, we've got Viashino Slaughtermaster. And it's a 1/1 double strike creature, and that's all that matters really here. I mean, yes, you've got the black and the green if you really wanted to splash into that to give it +1/+1 to the end of turn, but to be perfectly honest, it is fencing ace but in red, and this alongside of enchantments and like artifact weapons like Bone Splitter, for example, is going to do some serious work. So moving on now into the 3-drops, we're going to start off with Brazen Wolves. So whenever it attacks, it gets +2/+0 to the end of turn. So really, it's a 4/3 for 3. Again, strong for an aggressive looking creature there. Next up, we've got Blood Ogre. It's got Bloodthirst 1 here and First Strike. So realistically, you're not going to want to play this creature until you've done combat damage to a player. That means it comes in as a 3/3 first striker. Worst case scenario, you could bring it as a 2/2 first strike, but most of the time you're going to really want to get that Bloodthirst trigger on there. Next up, we've got Girapurg Gearcrafter. So for 3 and a red, you've got yourself a 2/1, enters the battlefield, creates a 1/1 colourless stop-to artifact creature token with fly on the battlefield. So you're getting 2 bodies there for 3 mana, and one of them's flying as well with evasion. Nice and strong. Next up, we've got Gitu Slinger. So for 2 and a red, you've got a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Great. It's got an echo cost on there as well, but you know, that's only if you really want it. It just means that you've got 2 damage straight into your opponent already, and then you've got yourself a blocker if needs be. And if you've got the extra mana and you haven't got anything to do, pay the echo cost and swing in as well. Next up, we've got Goblin Heel Cutter. Again, you can see it as a 4-drop, but to be perfectly honest, it's going to be coming in for its dash drop every single time. So whenever it attacks, target creature can't block this turn, so you can dash cost this in, stop one of the creatures your opponent's got from blocking, and just deal some extra damage there. And then bring it back to your hand and keep doing it over and over and over again. Next up, we've got Minotaur Skull Cleaver. 2 and a red is a 2/2 with haste. When it enters the battlefield, it gets +2/+0 to the end of turn. So really, on the first turn it comes out, it's a 4/2, and then the rest of the time it's a 2/2. That's a strong amount of damage coming in straight away. Next up, we've got Splatterflug. So for 2 and a red, it's a 2/2 with Unleash. Again, you're going to be paying the Unleash cost more often than not, and it's just a first strike. So again, a 3/3 first striker for 3. Next up, we've got Sakata Lancer. I'm hoping that's how it's pronounced anyway. Nice older card we've got here. It's a 2/2 with flanking, and it's got haste as well. It's just the way it's written here, because it's old, it doesn't have summoning sickness, just means it's got haste. And then last of all, we've got another shiny foil here of Volshock Sorcerer. So for 1 and 2 red, you've got a 1/1 with haste. You can tap it to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So it just means it can tap when it comes out as well, which is actually nice and strong there. You can either ping the opponent, or you can remove a potential blocker or creature from your opponent's side that you don't want to have on the board anymore. So onto the 4-drops now, and we start off with Beetleback Chief. So it's a 2/2 for 4. When it enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield. Again, making your board presence quite wide. If you can blink it as well, potentially, if you splash for either blue or you're going to be splashing for white there, you're going to be able to really get a lot of advantage out of that as well and really build up your board presence. Probably more likely blue though. Next up, we've got Gorehorn Minotaurs. So for 2 and 2 red with Bloodthirst 2, again, you're not going to want to really put this out without getting that Bloodthirst trigger. It's a 5/5 for 4. Next up, we've got Ill-Tempered Cyclops. Again, 4 costs for a 3/3 with Trample, and if you've got extra mana later on in the game, you've got a perfect place to sink that in, and that is by paying 6 to give it Monstrosity 3, so it then becomes a 6/6. And then the last of the 4-drops is Keldon Berserker. So for 3 and a red, it's a soldier as well, so you could potentially splash it in with white. Whenever it attacks, you control no untapped lands. It gets +3/+0 to the end of turn, so it could be attacking for a 5/3 if you have no lands untapped, which would be absolutely great. Then moving now on to the 5+ drops, and we're going to start off with Crown Hunter Hireling. So for 4 and a red, you've got yourself a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, and it can't attack unless defending player is the monarch. So that is great for you to be able to have the monarchy, get yourself a little bit of extra card draw, and it just means that you've got yourself a 4/4 defender if the opponent manages to get it off you, but you're really going to be swinging in most of the time anyway, so I'm pretty sure you can keep that. Next up, we've got a couple of werewolves, starting off with Vildimpack Outcast. 4 and a red is a 4/4 with Trample. You can pay 1 red to give it +1/-1 until end of turn. So again, when blockers have been declared and no one's actually going to be blocking you, or it's literally just going to be chump blocked with a little 1/1, you can pump this up and deal some extra damage. Or you can pay 5 and 2 red to transform him over. Just get the card out. Into a 5/7 with Trample, and then it is pay 1 of any mana, and it gets +1/+0 to the end of turn, so you can really pump this up to be massive if needs be with the extra mana going on. Next up, and the other one we've now got is Gatstaff Arsonists. So for 4 and a red, it's a 5/4 human werewolf. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast on the last turn, you get to transform it. And then it becomes a 6/5 with Menace, and then it needs 2 or more spells to be cast in a turn, and then it gets transformed back. But, I mean, a 6/5 with Menace, if you can get that to actually swing in, is going to do some serious work. Last of all is Chartooth Cougar. So for 5 and a red, we've got 4/4. For 1 red mana, you can do this as many times as you want. It gets +1/+0 to the end of turn. Plus, it's got mountain cycling as well, so if you really need to get some, a mountain card earlier on, you can pay that 2 mana, sacrifice, get rid of this. You can always bring it back anyway with certain spells that are going on within the game and get yourself that much needed mountain. So as you'll probably guess, in red there's a hell of a lot of removal, and lots and lots of ways to buff up your creatures to do a significant amount of damage, and that is the end goal here. So to start off with, we've got Brute Force, instant speed, target creature gets +3/+3 until the end of turn. That's brutal, as it quite quietly says. Next up, we've got Burst Lightning. So for 1, it'll deal 2 damage to target creature or player, but you can use a kicker 4/4, and it deals 4 damage instead. So if you've got excess mana, great, go for it. Next up, we've got Lightning Bolt. I don't need to say any more than that. The best 1-cost piece of burn spell in the entire game. Absolutely love this, and it looks great in foil. Next up, we're into the 2-drops now. We've got Incinerate. So for 1 and a red, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. A creature dealt this way can't be regenerated. Again, that's key there as well. So that's why it's worth the extra 1 mana. Next up, we've got Lash Out. So for 1 and a red, it deals 3 damage to target creature. Clash with an opponent. If you win, Lash Out deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. So clashing with an opponent is reveal the top card of his or her library, and then put that card onto the top or bottom. A player wins if his or her card has a higher converted mana cost. So that's just a nice way of, being able to actually get a little bit of extra damage done out of that. Next up, we've got Lightning Strike. 1 and a red, deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Next, we've got Magma Jet, and we've got a nice little foil going on here as well. So for 1 and a red, it's 2 damage to target creature or player, and you get to scry 2 as well, so you get to sort out potentially the next 2 turns, or getting rid of some of the rubbish off the top to find the actual cards you want there. Next, we've got Searing Blaze. So for 2 red, it deals 1 damage to target player and 1 damage to target creature that player controls. If you have played a land this turn, it's 3 damage for that instead. So generally, you're going to try and make sure you end up playing a land this turn to get the most out of this. Next up, we've got Searing Spear. Again, nice foil version of that there. 1 and a red, deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Moving on into 3-drops now, and we've got Brimstone Volley. 2 and a red, deals 3 damage to target creature or player, or if a morbid trigger has happened, which shouldn't be again too difficult, deals 5 damage to that creature or player instead. Next up, we've got Stagger Shock, and again, I managed to get hold of a nice little promo version of this one. So for 2 and a red, instant speed, deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and it's got Rebound. So if you cast this spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you get to cast this with exile for free. Great. Next, we've got Fire Blast, and again, more than likely you won't be paying the 6 mana for this, but you're actually sacrificing the 2 mountains, deals 4 damage to target creature or player. And last of all, again, another card you will not be paying the full mana cost for this is Thunderous Wrath. So realistically, at the miracle cost, if you drew this card for your turn, you only have to pay 1. It deals 5 damage to target creature or player. Worst case scenario, 6 mana to do the same thing. So moving on now into the sorceries, I'm going to start off with Chain Lightning. Sorcery speed deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Then that player may pay 2 red if they have it to be able to copy that spell and do it back to yourself. More than likely, you're not going to have that done back to yourself. So again, sorcery speed equivalent of a lightning bolt there with a little bit more of a downside if your opponent has 2 red mana. Next up, we've got Flame Slash. So it's just 4 damage straight to a creature for 1 cost. Can't complain about that. Next, we've got Firebolt. Deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Plus, you've then got Flashback on this as well, so getting extra value out of it when it's in the graveyard for 4 and a red. And I do like having extra value out of a card in cube. Next, we've got Forked Bolt. So it deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 target creatures and or players for 1 cost. I can't complain about that. Next, we've got Rift Bolt. You could pay 3 mana for this if you really wanted to and you had nothing else to do, but realistically, you're going to be paying for the suspend cost for that, just for the 1 mana, and the next turn you do 3 damage to target creature or player. Yes, your opponent can kind of play around it a little bit if they wanted to, but worst case scenario, it's 3 damage to the dome. Next up, we've got Reckless Charge. So for 1 red, target creature gets +3/+0 and gains haste until the end of turn. And you got Flashback for it as well. So being able to give some of the bigger creatures haste out of nowhere, wherever you and your opponent's not really going to be seeing it coming, is great value. Next up, we've got Arc Lightning. 2 and a red, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures and or players. So that way you could get rid of a couple of creatures and do some damage to the player as well. Next up, we've got Hoarding Outburst. Again, another card from Masters 25. It's in foil as well, though it doesn't seem to be showing up very well. It's quite a dark card, really. Create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. So nice way to fill the board up. Another way to get some nice goblin creature tokens here is Empty the Warrens. So for 3 and a red, create 2 creature tokens, and it's got Storm as well. So if you can get a lot of cards, get a lot of creature cards and spells being played, fantastic. It's going to be able to get you a lot more goblins. Next up, we've got Pyrotechnics. So for 4 and a red, it deals 4 damage divided as you choose amongst any number of target creatures and players. Fairly expensive, but I do like the fact that it's, you can spread it around, get rid of a lot of token creatures if needs be, or spread the damage as you wanted to, so that's quite nice. Next up we've got Fireball, and this looks like a really sweet foil. It is a really sweet foil. X and red, it deals X damage divided evenly rounded down among any number of target creatures and or players, and it costs 1 more to cast for each target beyond the first, so you could just literally throw all of your mana in straight at an opponent or again one of their creatures as well if you really need to get it off the board. Next up we've got Cavex Torch. So for X and a red, interrupts the target at a cost an additional 2 to play, which is quite relevant there, and it deals X damage to target creature or player, so straight flat damage to a 1 target. Can't complain about that. And then we've got Rolling Thunder up next. So for X and 2 red, it deals X damage divided any way you choose among any number of target creatures and players, so it's just giving red the ability to have a little bit of a wrath effect going on as well. Moving on into the enchantments, and it's just the one really. Red doesn't need that many enchantments to do what it needs to do. We've got Madcap skills here, so for 1 red, enchanted creature gets +3/+0 and has menace, and that is potentially really strong depending on the size of the creature. It could be swinging in for a hell of a lot of damage there. So there we have all of the red cards within my cube, and needless to say, aggro is definitely well supported within red. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of it, right? And then burn is a secondary aspect of it, so just being able to fling loads and loads of spells at the opponent and kill them off that way. So that's definitely supported as well. And let me know in the comment section below if there's any cards that I've missed that would actually be able to be an improvement of what I've got. I'd be very interested to find out. But at this moment in time, there's going to be a bit more testing, a bit more waiting to see which cards are performing well, which ones aren't, and there's definitely going to be some gameplay for that as well. But like I mentioned in all of the other previous videos, there's going to be every single day this week, all of the colours are going to be broken down in video to see what is actually into my cube. So hit that bell notification icon next to the subscribe button so you don't actually miss when these are released. And just to add on top of that, I've recently done a collaboration with Matt with Total MTG. I'll put a little card on the screen now for you so you can watch some actual paper Magic gameplay, because I know you've been asking for that for quite some time. We put together 2 of the Challenger decks, and we kind of wanted to see how they'd end up performing against each other. This was kind of a tester to see how the actual gameplay videos would end up working, and to be perfectly honest, I'm actually very happy with how it ended up turning out. But so it's just an example of what you might end up seeing sooner rather than later for some actual Pauper paper cube gameplay, and then hopefully we can then expand it to even more 8-player drafts and all this other kind of stuff as well. So hopefully that'll get you salivating on what might actually be to come on the channel. I would just like to take this moment to thank my Patreons of the channel. I can't thank you enough for the help and support that you're giving me. If you'd like to do the same, head over to patreon.com/lifebegins@20, and there'll be a link in the description below for that as well, where there are plenty of rewards to choose from. With your support, we can really push to make this channel even better. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for new videos every Tuesday and Friday. With your support, we can really help this channel to grow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.